The avoidant attachment style represents one of psychology's most deceptive and destructive personality patterns. These individuals possess an extraordinary capacity for inflicting psychological damage while simultaneously positioning themselves as the injured party. Their ability to harm extends far beyond what most people recognize or acknowledge, operating through sophisticated mechanisms of emotional manipulation, strategic victimhood, and manufactured innocence. Understanding their true potential for destruction requires examining the intricate psychological architecture they construct to shield themselves from accountability while systematically dismantling their target's emotional well-being, social connections, and sense of reality itself. The hidden architecture of avoidant destruction. Avoidant individuals construct elaborate psychological fortresses designed to protect their fragile self-image while enabling devastating attacks on others. Their destructive capacity operates through multiple layers of sophisticated defense mechanisms that serve dual purposes, protecting their ego while creating optimal conditions for inflicting maximum psychological damage. These mechanisms function with such subtlety and precision that their victims often remain unaware of the systematic nature of the abuse they're experiencing. The foundation of their destructive power lies in their masterful ability to disconnect from their own emotions while remaining acutely attuned to the emotional vulnerabilities of others. This emotional dissociation creates a profound psychological advantage, allowing them to observe and manipulate emotional responses without experiencing the natural empathetic constraints that typically prevent harmful behavior. They become emotional predators operating without the internal warning systems that normally signal when behavior becomes destructive. Their emotional detachment functions as both weapon and shield while appearing calm and rational. They systematically identify and exploit every emotional weakness, insecurity, and trigger point in their targets. This process occurs gradually, almost imperceptibly, as they gather intelligence about their victims' psychological landscape. They catalog fears, insecurities, past traumas, and emotional patterns with the precision of military strategists mapping enemy territory. The avoidant capacity for harm extends into the realm of identity destruction. They possess an uncanny ability to identify the core aspects of their target's self-concept and systematically undermine them through subtle but persistent attacks. They don't simply criticize behavior, they assault the fundamental beliefs their victims hold about themselves, their worth, and their place in the world. This identity erosion occurs so gradually that victims often fail to recognize the systematic nature of the assault until significant damage has already occurred. The victim mentality arsenal. The avoidant victim mentality represents perhaps their most sophisticated and dangerous weapon. They've perfected the ability to transform their own harmful behaviors into evidence of their victimization, creating a psychological hall of mirrors where accountability becomes impossible and genuine. Victims are reframed as aggressors. This strategic victimhood operates through multiple interconnected mechanisms that work together to create an impenetrable shield of innocence while enabling continued destructive behavior. Their victim narrative construction follows predictable patterns designed to maximize sympathy while minimizing scrutiny. They position themselves as long-suffering individuals who've endured countless betrayals, disappointments, and emotional injuries at the hands of others. This historical victimization becomes the justification for their current defensive behaviors, creating a logical framework that explains away their harmful actions while generating protective sympathy from observers. The avoidant ability to reframe situations reaches extraordinary levels of sophistication. They possess an almost supernatural capacity to identify the precise angles and perspectives that cast them in the most favorable light, while simultaneously portraying their actual victims as the true aggressors. This reframing occurs in real time during conflicts, allowing them to adapt their victim narrative to match the specific dynamics of each confrontation. Their emotional reactions during conflicts are carefully calibrated to support their victim narrative. They've learned to display just the right amount of hurt, confusion, and wounded innocence to trigger protective instincts in observers while simultaneously invalidating their victims' emotional responses. These performances are so convincing that even trained professionals can be deceived by their apparent genuineness. The victim mentality extends beyond individual interactions into their broader life narrative. They cultivate long-term stories of persecution, misunderstanding, and unfair treatment that serve as permanent insurance policies against accountability. These overarching victim narratives create such powerful emotional frameworks that questioning their behavior feels like attacking someone who has already suffered enough. The innocence manufacturing process. The avoidant ability to manufacture innocence represents a masterclass in psychological manipulation. They've developed sophisticated systems for creating and maintaining plausible deniability while engaging in systematically destructive behaviors. This innocence isn't genuine, it's a carefully constructed facade built through strategic emotional positioning, calculated responses, and elaborate justification systems that make their harmful actions appear accidental, misunderstood, or entirely justified. Their innocence construction begins with emotional presentation. They've mastered the art of appearing genuinely confused, hurt, and bewildered when confronted about their behavior. These emotional displays are so convincing that they trigger natural protective instincts in observers, creating immediate doubt about the validity of accusations against them. Their facial expressions, voice tones, and body language all work together to create an impression of wounded innocence that appears impossible to fake. The avoidant language patterns play crucial roles in maintaining their innocent image. They've developed sophisticated verbal techniques that allow them to deny responsibility while simultaneously admitting to problematic behaviors. Their words are carefully chosen to create maximum ambiguity, allowing multiple interpretations that consistently favor their innocence. They speak in ways that make definitive accusations nearly impossible while creating sufficient doubt to protect their reputation. Their timing represents another crucial element in innocence manufacturing. They possess an extraordinary ability to choose precisely the right moments for their most destructive behaviors, moments when their actions can be easily misinterpreted, overlooked, or attributed to external circumstances. This strategic timing creates natural explanations for their harmful behaviors that don't require acknowledging malicious intent. Memory manipulation forms the cornerstone of their innocent strategy. They demonstrate remarkable abilities to forget, minimize, or reinterpret their own harmful behaviors while maintaining perfect recall of any perceived slights or injuries they've suffered. This selective memory creates alternate versions of events that consistently cast them as innocent victims rather than active participants in creating conflict and damage. The systematic nature of avoidant harm. Understanding the true danger posed by avoidant individuals requires recognizing the systematic, methodical nature of their destructive behaviors. Their harm doesn't occur through random outbursts or momentary lapses in judgment. It represents the calculated execution of sophisticated psychological warfare designed to achieve specific outcomes while maintaining complete deniability. This systematic approach makes their destructive impact far more severe and long-lasting than more obvious forms of abuse. Their systematic approach begins with comprehensive target assessment. They invest significant time and energy in studying their victims, identifying vulnerabilities, mapping emotional triggers, and understanding psychological patterns. This intelligence gathering phase allows them to craft personalized attack strategies that exploit their target's specific weaknesses while avoiding areas where their victim might possess strength or resistance. The implementation of harm follows carefully planned schedules designed to maximize impact while minimizing detection. They understand that consistent low-level psychological pressure creates more devastating long-term effects than sporadic, intense attacks. Their destructive behaviors are distributed across time in patterns that appear random, but actually follow sophisticated psychological principles designed to create maximum psychological destabilization. Their systematic approach includes careful attention to social positioning and reputation management. They understand that their ability to inflict harm depends largely on maintaining positive relationships with potential allies and witnesses. They invest considerable energy in cultivating favorable impressions with mutual friends, family members, and professional associates who might later serve as character witnesses or sources of support during conflicts. Documentation avoidance represents another crucial element of their systematic approach. They've learned to conduct their most destructive behaviors in ways that leave minimal evidence or witnesses. Their harmful actions occur through subtle emotional manipulations, strategic silences, and carefully timed withdrawals that create devastating impacts without providing clear proof of intentional harm. The emotional destruction mechanisms. The avoidant capacity for emotional destruction operates through multiple sophisticated mechanisms that work together to systematically dismantle their victims' psychological well-being. These mechanisms function with such precision and subtlety that victims often remain unaware of the coordinated nature of the assault they're experiencing. The emotional damage accumulates gradually, creating profound psychological injuries that can persist long after the relationship has ended. Emotional invalidation forms the cornerstone of their destructive arsenal. They possess extraordinary abilities to make their victims feel that their emotional responses are inappropriate, excessive, or fundamentally wrong. This invalidation doesn't occur through direct criticism, but through subtle expressions, strategic silences, and carefully chosen words that communicate disapproval and rejection of their victim's emotional reality. Reality distortion represents another primary mechanism of emotional destruction. They excel at creating alternate versions of events that cast their victims' perceptions as inaccurate, biased, or delusional. This systematic undermining of their victims' reality testing abilities creates profound psychological confusion and self-doubt that can persist long after the relationship ends. Isolation tactics form a crucial component of their emotional destruction strategy. They systematically work to separate their victims from sources of emotional support and validation. This isolation occurs gradually through subtle criticisms of the victim's friends and family, strategic scheduling conflicts that prevent social connections, and creating emotional climates that make their victims reluctant to share their experiences with others. The avoiding ability to weaponize silence creates particularly devastating emotional impacts. They understand that strategic withdrawal of emotional availability can inflict more damage than direct attacks. Their silent treatments, emotional unavailability, and strategic neglect create profound feelings of abandonment and worthlessness that cut directly to the core of their victim's psychological well-being. The social manipulation network. Avoidant individuals demonstrate remarkable abilities to manipulate social dynamics in ways that amplify their capacity for harm while protecting them from consequences. They understand that individual relationships exist within broader social networks, and they systematically work to position themselves advantageously within these networks while isolating and discrediting their victims. This social manipulation extends their destructive reach far beyond direct interactions. Their reputation management strategies operate on multiple levels simultaneously. They invest considerable energy in presenting themselves as reasonable, stable, and emotionally mature individuals to their broader social circles. This positive reputation building creates powerful protective shields that make accusations against them appear unlikely or motivated by the accuser's emotional instability. Social triangulation represents one of their most sophisticated manipulation tactics. They excel at bringing third parties into conflicts in ways that create additional pressure on their victims while generating support for their own positions. These triangulated relationships create complex social dynamics that make direct confrontation nearly impossible, while multiplying the sources of stress and confusion for their targets. Their ability to identify and exploit social hierarchies allows them to amplify their destructive impact through institutional and community structures. They understand how to present their cases to authority figures, support systems, and social institutions in ways that generate official backing for their positions while discrediting their victims' experiences and perspectives. Information control forms another crucial element of their social manipulation strategy. They carefully manage what information reaches different members of their social network, creating different versions of events for different audiences. This information compartmentalization prevents their victims from building coherent support networks while maintaining their own positive reputation across multiple social circles. The long-term psychological damage. The psychological damage inflicted by avoidant individuals extends far beyond the duration of direct contact, creating lasting impacts that can affect their victims' ability to form healthy relationships, trust their own perceptions, and maintain psychological stability for years or even decades after the relationship ends. Understanding the scope and persistence of this damage is crucial for recognizing the true destructive potential of avoidant personalities. Identity fragmentation represents one of the most severe forms of long-term damage. Victims often find themselves fundamentally uncertain about their own character, worth, and capabilities long after the relationship ends. The systematic undermining of their self-concept creates lasting psychological wounds that affect every aspect of their lives, from career decisions to future relationships. Trust destruction extends beyond the immediate relationship to affect the victim's ability to form healthy connections with others. The sophisticated manipulation tactics employed by avoidant individuals create such profound betrayal experiences that victims often develop hypervigilant relationship patterns that prevent them from achieving genuine intimacy and emotional security. Reality testing damage can persist for extended periods, causing victims to constantly question their own perceptions and memories. The systematic gaslighting and reality distortion experienced during the relationship creates lasting uncertainty about their ability to accurately assess situations and people, leading to chronic self-doubt and decision-making paralysis. Emotional regulation difficulties often develop as victims struggle to recover from the chronic stress and psychological manipulation they experienced. The constant state of emotional arousal and confusion created by avoidant manipulation can result in lasting changes to stress response systems that affect physical health, emotional stability, and cognitive functioning. The psychological warfare tactics. The avoidant approach to interpersonal relationships resembles sophisticated psychological warfare conducted through civilian channels. They employ military-grade psychological tactics adapted for domestic and professional environments, creating devastating impacts while maintaining complete operational security. Their warfare methods operate through multiple simultaneous campaigns designed to overwhelm their target's defensive capabilities while preserving their own strategic advantages. Psychological attrition forms the backbone of their warfare strategy. They understand that sustained psychological pressure applied consistently over extended periods creates more comprehensive destruction than intense short-term attacks. Their attrition campaigns involve continuous low-level stress applications that gradually exhaust their victims' emotional resources and psychological resilience. This approach prevents the target from mounting effective defenses while avoiding the dramatic confrontations that might expose their tactics. Strategic misinformation campaigns represent another crucial element of their psychological warfare arsenal. They systematically introduce false or distorted information into their victims' psychological environment, creating confusion about reality, relationships, and personal worth. These misinformation operations are conducted with such subtlety that victims often internalize the false information as their own thoughts and conclusions. The avoidant intelligence operations involve comprehensive surveillance of their target's emotional states, social connections, and psychological vulnerabilities. They maintain constant awareness of their victim's mental condition, using this intelligence to time their attacks for maximum psychological impact. This surveillance occurs through seemingly innocent conversations, social media monitoring, and careful observation of behavioral patterns. Psychological supply line disruption focuses on severing their victims' connections to sources of emotional support and validation. They systematically work to compromise relationships with friends, family members, therapists, and other support systems that might provide their target with accurate feedback about the relationship dynamics. This isolation strategy ensures that their victim remains dependent on their manipulated version of reality. The Innocence Maintenance System. The Avoidant Innocence Maintenance represents a sophisticated operational security system designed to protect their reputation while enabling continued harmful behavior. This system operates through multiple redundant mechanisms that create layers of protection against accountability while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances and challenges to their innocent image. Their innocence maintenance begins with comprehensive situation assessment and risk analysis. They continuously monitor their environment for potential threats to their reputation, adjusting their behavioral strategies to minimize exposure while maximizing their destructive impact. This assessment process allows them to identify which witnesses pose risks, which social dynamics might work in their favor, and how to position themselves advantageously in potential conflicts. Plausible deniability construction forms a central component of their innocence maintenance system. Every harmful action is carefully designed to allow multiple interpretations, with at least one interpretation that supports their innocence. They develop elaborate explanations for their behaviors that sound reasonable to casual observers while obscuring the systematic nature of their destructive actions. Evidence management represents another crucial element of their innocence maintenance strategy. They carefully control what evidence of their behavior exists, conducting their most harmful actions in ways that minimize documentation while maximizing psychological impact. They understand that perceptions matter more than objective reality in social and legal contexts, focusing their efforts on managing impressions rather than changing their underlying behaviors. Their character witness cultivation involves long-term investments in relationships with individuals who can provide credible testimony about their character during conflicts. They maintain separate behavioral patterns for different social circles, ensuring that they have reliable sources of positive character references while keeping their victims isolated from these supportive networks. Crisis management protocols allow them to respond rapidly and effectively when their innocence is challenged. They have prepared responses for various types of accusations, backup narratives for different scenarios, and strategic retreat options that allow them to preserve their reputation even when faced with overwhelming evidence of their harmful behavior. The victim manufacturing process. Beyond simply adopting victim mentalities, avoidant individuals actively manufacture victim status through sophisticated psychological operations designed to create genuine persecution experiences that validate their victim narratives. This manufacturing process involves orchestrating situations that generate authentic victim experiences while concealing their own role in creating these circumstances. Victim manufacturing begins with strategic provocation techniques designed to elicit aggressive or emotional responses from their targets. They systematically push psychological buttons while maintaining calm exteriors, creating situations where their victims appear to be the aggressors while they remain composed and reasonable. These provocations are calibrated to generate strong emotional reactions that can be later used as evidence of their target's instability or abusive nature. Situation orchestration involves carefully manipulating circumstances to create scenarios where they naturally end up in victim positions. They arrange meetings, conversations, and interactions in ways that maximize the likelihood of conflicts that cast them as the injured party. This orchestration occurs through seemingly innocent suggestions about timing, locations, and participants that actually serve their strategic victim positioning goals. Their persecution manufacturing extends into professional and social environments where they systematically create conditions that lead to their exclusion, criticism, or professional difficulties. They engage in subtle sabotage behaviors that eventually result in negative consequences for themselves, providing authentic persecution experiences that validate their victim narratives while concealing their own role in creating these outcomes. Historical revision forms another crucial component of their victim manufacturing process. They systematically reinterpret past events to emphasize their victim status while minimizing or eliminating acknowledgement of their own harmful contributions. This historical revision creates comprehensive victim narratives that span their entire life history, providing extensive ammunition for future victim claims. Documentation manipulation allows them to create paper trails and evidence that support their manufactured victim status. They carefully preserve evidence of any harm they experience while systematically eliminating or minimizing documentation of their own harmful behaviors. This selective documentation creates official records that support their innocent victim image. The advanced manipulation techniques. The avoidant manipulation techniques extend far beyond basic emotional manipulation into sophisticated psychological operations that rival professional interrogation and influence techniques. These advanced methods represent the culmination of years of unconscious study and practice in human psychology, creating devastatingly effective tools for achieving their goals while maintaining their innocent image. Cognitive load manipulation involves overwhelming their victims' mental processing capabilities through information overload, emotional stress, and decision fatigue. They systematically increase the psychological burden their victims must carry while simultaneously positioning themselves as sources of relief and support. This technique creates psychological dependence while making their victims more vulnerable to further manipulation. Temporal manipulation focuses on controlling their victim's relationship with time and memory. They create confusion about when events occurred, how long situations persisted, and the sequence of interactions. This temporal disruption makes it nearly impossible for their victims to construct coherent narratives about their experiences, preventing effective resistance and making outside support more difficult to obtain. Social proof manipulation involves orchestrating situations where multiple people appear to support their version of events or validate their victim status. They carefully cultivate relationships and social dynamics that create the appearance of consensus around their innocence while isolating voices that might challenge their narratives. Authority manipulation techniques allow them to co-opt legitimate authority figures and institutional support systems to validate their positions. They understand how to present their cases to professionals, legal systems, and institutional authorities in ways that generate official backing for their claims while discrediting their victims' experiences. Emotional contagion exploitation involves deliberately triggering specific emotional states in their victims and then using these emotional responses against them. They become experts at reading and manipulating emotional energy, creating psychological atmospheres that serve their strategic goals while appearing to be natural consequences of their victims' emotional instability. The recovery sabotage operations. Perhaps most insidiously, avoidant individuals often continue their harmful influence even after relationships have officially ended, conducting sophisticated sabotage operations designed to prevent their victims from recovering or moving forward successfully. These operations ensure continued psychological control while maintaining complete deniability about their ongoing influence. Recovery sabotage begins with comprehensive monitoring of their victims' healing progress and new relationships. They maintain awareness of their former victims' psychological state, social connections, and life developments through social media surveillance, mutual connections, and strategic information gathering. This intelligence allows them to time their interventions for maximum disruptive impact. Reputation destruction campaigns target their victims' professional and social standing long after the relationship is ended. They systematically spread carefully crafted information designed to damage their former victims' credibility and opportunities while maintaining their own innocent image. These campaigns are conducted through seemingly casual conversations and concerned observations that appear motivated by genuine worry rather than malicious intent. New relationship interference involves subtle actions designed to sabotage their victims' attempts to form healthy new connections. They may reach out to new partners with expressions of concern about their victims' mental health, create situations that generate conflict in new relationships, or simply maintain enough presence in their victim's life to prevent complete emotional freedom. Professional sabotage operations target their victims' career advancement and professional opportunities. They may provide negative references disguised as honest assessments, create professional conflicts through strategic information sharing, or simply maintain professional connections that limit their victims' ability to escape their influence entirely. Therapeutic sabotage involves undermining their victims' attempts to seek professional help and healing. They may provide alternative explanations for their victims' experiences to mutual connections, share selective information with therapeutic providers, or create situations that make therapeutic progress more difficult to achieve. Protection and recognition strategies. Protecting yourself from avoidant manipulation requires developing sophisticated recognition abilities that can identify their subtle manipulation tactics before significant damage occurs. This protection involves understanding their behavioral patterns, recognizing your own vulnerability factors, and implementing defensive strategies that maintain your psychological integrity while navigating these dangerous relationships. Pattern recognition represents the first line of defense against avoidant manipulation. Learning to identify their characteristic behaviors, the strategic victim positioning, the innocence manufacturing, the systematic emotional invalidation, allows you to recognize the manipulation as it occurs rather than after significant damage has been inflicted. This recognition requires understanding that their calm demeanor and reasonable appearance often mask highly sophisticated psychological operations. Emotional validation systems become crucial protective mechanisms. Developing relationships with trusted individuals who can provide objective perspectives on your experiences helps counteract the reality distortion and gaslighting that form central components of avoidant manipulation strategies. These validation systems must be carefully protected from the avoidant influence and manipulation attempts. Documentation practices can provide crucial protection against memory manipulation and reality distortion. Keeping records of interactions, conversations, and behavioral patterns creates objective references that can help maintain your grip on reality when faced with systematic attempts to alter your perceptions. This documentation should include not only obvious conflicts, but also subtle manipulative behaviors and their emotional impacts. Boundary enforcement becomes essential for limiting the avoidant access to your emotional vulnerabilities. Understanding that their calm demeanor doesn't indicate good intentions allows you to maintain protective barriers regardless of their apparent reasonableness or wounded innocence. These boundaries must be maintained consistently despite their attempts to portray boundary enforcement as cruel or unreasonable. Professional support integration involves working with therapeutic providers who understand the sophisticated nature of avoidant manipulation and can help you maintain psychological stability while navigating these relationships. Not all professionals understand the subtle nature of this abuse, making it crucial to find providers who can recognize and address the specific challenges posed by avoidant manipulation. The most crucial protection involves understanding that the absence of obvious aggression doesn't indicate the absence of destructive intent. Avoidant individuals have perfected the art of inflicting maximum damage through minimum obvious behavior, making their true capacity for harm nearly invisible until the cumulative effects become undeniable. Recognition of this hidden destructive potential represents your first and most important line of defense against their sophisticated psychological warfare. Understanding their systematic approach to harm allows you to recognize that their behaviors aren't random or accidental, but represent carefully orchestrated campaigns designed to achieve specific psychological outcomes while maintaining complete innocence. This recognition transforms confusing and painful experiences into understandable patterns that can be effectively addressed and defended against. The path to protection requires accepting that some individuals operate with fundamentally different motivational frameworks than healthy people assume. Their capacity for harm extends far beyond what most people can imagine or accept, requiring protective strategies that match the sophistication and persistence of their manipulative operations.